Hey folks, I'm JR. Welcome to the channel, and today we're going to be talking about what every prepper needs to know about seed vaults. But before we get too deep into the video, if this is your first time by the channel, welcome. I'm glad you're here. And if you've been by here before, thank you for coming back. I'm glad I didn't scare you off. If you haven't done so already, if you wouldn't mind hitting the subscribe button, the notification bell, and if at any point in this video you decide you like what's going on, or maybe you just feel sorry for me, go ahead and hit that like button as well. Being able to grow your own food is extremely important for preppers. The first reason is it can kind of help insulate you from things like job loss, inflation, food shortages, stuff like that. And the second reason is it can kind of help out the food storage that you already have. First of all, it can help it last longer than it would if you didn't have additional food coming in. And then secondly, it'll provide additional nutrients that might not be present in that food storage. Things like fruits, vegetables, herbs, stuff like that, things that you would get in different types of seed vaults. Those are good to supplement your diet to help keep you healthy. And one way that many preppers like to plan on having a survival garden is to buy a seed vault such as this, so that they will be prepared for some type of crisis, such as the impending alpacalypse, where alpaca overlords will attempt to enslave humanity. Okay, that probably won't happen. But point is, I went ahead and I got probably the most popular seed vault on Amazon. So let's take a look at what's inside. This seed vault is made by Open Seed Vault and contains around 15,000 non-GMO heirloom vegetable seeds. And going price for these is usually around $40 to $45. It's $45 on their website, but usually you can find it around for $41, $42. But just remember, prices do fluctuate. That's just a fact of life. So something I like about this is that it comes in a resealable Mylar pouch. You can see the zipper here, and the fact that it's in Mylar is going to do a really good job protecting it from moisture getting inside. It's the same material people like to use for preserving things like rice, beans, stuff like that long term. And this package is pretty tiny. I mean, it's not all that big, so just as like a comparison, there's a tape measure, okay? And this would very easily slip down into a backpack or a kit, so it's ready to go if you need to bug out or something like that, okay? And opening it up, and dump that out. So when you open the package, you'll see seeds for 32 different types of plants, including things like tomatoes, corn, beans, and carrots. And I'll include a link in the description below if you want to see all the varieties that it has. And I really like that the seeds come in individual Ziploc style bags and they're separated by variety. This is great because you're not going to plant all of these at once. Kind of like I just opened this package. That's not ideal for long-term storage, but that's okay because I'm probably going to use some of these in the fall, winter. So if we plant, say, a winter crop, then our summer crops are going to still be protected in their Ziploc bag. It's not as good as it was before in the pouch, sealed up, but it's going to be a lot better protected than, say, seeds that you would buy at the store or order online that are just in paper type little pouches. And another cool thing that it comes with is a growing guide. And when you open this up, you'll see information for each one of the plants that it includes. Things like when to plant them, how to start the seeds, and then towards the end, it has a seed saving guide that'll help you harvest your seeds at the end of the season so that you can use those in future years. A lot of preppers think that just because they buy something like this, that they're going to have a long-term source of food. But that's kind of a false sense of security, and it's not a problem with the product. This, along with most of the others that you can find, get really good reviews. The seeds produced, people are happy with them. But it comes down to improper usage or misunderstanding how a product like this works. Take this hammer, for example. Okay, if I start trying to drive a nail like that, it ain't going to work. That doesn't mean that this hammer is a piece of junk. That means I'm not using it right. And preppers, a lot of the time, think that the magic solution is just buying something. We kind of like to romanticize certain things, and one of those is I get seeds, put them in the ground, I have no gardening experience, I don't know anything about gardening, and it's going to turn out just fine because there's a small little book in here that gives me a small bit of information. Y'all, that's not really how this works. There's a lot more to gardening than just plopping a seed down into the ground and hoping that it grows. I'm not a master gardener. I don't have years of experience. This is my first year growing a garden. But in that very short period of time, I've learned enough about it to know that if you have no gardening experience and your plan is to stick this in a bug out bag and head for the hills and then live off of it pretty much immediately, you're going to be in for a very rude awakening and you're probably going to starve. If you're new to gardening, you're going to need to learn about things like soil. What sort of soil is going to be the best place to plant these? Also, you need to know how to start seeds, because starting a seed is a whole other ball game than taking care of a plant once you get it up and going. Also, fertilization. What fertilizer do you use? How often do you fertilize it? How often do you water it? And also, how often you water things will depend on where you have it planted. Like, take, for example, my garden is in buckets, and I'm in Texas where it's extremely hot. I have to water a lot. But if you're in kind of a cooler area and your plants are in the ground, you water as much as I do, you're going to drown your plants. Then another thing that you got to take into account is your hardiness zone. Some plants grow well in other parts of the country and the world than they do in others. Take where I live, for example, in Texas. I can grow peppers, tomatoes, stuff like that for, I mean, good grief, for probably nearly half of the year, give or take. But somebody in New England probably won't be able to do that as much because those types of plants favor higher temperatures and vice versa. There's a lot of plants that they can grow up there for a good portion of the year that would like shrivel up and die here because it is so hot. And another thing that you need to think about when picking up a seed vault such as this, seeds do not have an indefinite shelf life, and some seeds will last longer than others. That's why it's extremely important to pay attention to the packaged date on here and kind of have a general idea on, you know, how long certain seeds last. I probably won't go into like specifics in this video, at least, just because that's a whole other video. Tomato seeds will last for a different length of time than other types of plants, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of information there to digest, and the key is education. Find out what grows in your area and how long you can store these seeds. You don't want to be in a situation where you've had this in your bug out bag, your emergency kit for 10 years, you go to plant the seeds and they don't produce plants, or they do produce plants, but they're all sad, weak, and don't produce any fruit. And another important thing to realize is that when you start a plant from the seed, it's going to be months before you can get any food out of it. So you need to know what you're doing planting, have food storage that you can live on before these plants start to produce. The fact that they're heirloom varieties will compound that problem because heirloom varieties don't grow and produce as quickly as hybrids. The good thing is you can, you know, harvest the seeds at the end of the season, preserve them, and use them again next year. So you have a sustainable food source. But every year, it's going to take a while to get that garden growing again. So the best advice that I can give you is, yes, go ahead and get one of these. But also learn to start gardening as quickly as possible if you want to grow your own food during like a long-term survival situation. I would recommend starting off with a mixture of hybrid plants and then also heirloom plants. The hybrid plants will be a little bit more forgiving if you're a newbie, which means that if you make a couple of mistakes, you probably won't kill your entire garden. So go to your hardware store, go to Walmart, anywhere that sells plants, and get you just, you know, get you some pepper plants, get, you know, whatever grows in your area, and start kind of messing with those. Figure out what works for your area, what works for where you're planting them, stuff like that. And also start a few heirloom varieties as well, so you'll get some experience starting seeds, things like that. And another thing to remember about starting seeds is now it's easy, okay? You can start them inside, you can have grow lights plugged in, all that kind of stuff. But if you're in a prolonged emergency and you don't have reliable access to electricity, those grow lights might not be as useful. So you might want to experiment with starting seeds without kind of helpful modern technologies. Now, kind of the big question is, where do seed vaults fit in an overall preparedness strategy? And now everybody's different, but I'll tell you kind of how I see them and how I'll use them. I see them as a great starter seed bank. You'll have a lot of different heirloom varieties that you can play with, experiment with, see what works for you. And also, it is a good backup seed option. So if you already have a garden at your home, maybe you have a few plants in like buckets or pots that you can load up and take with you during an emergency, you know, like the guy did in Waterworld with his tomato plant. I don't really know how practical that is, but if you have a bucket garden, point is you could load it up and take at least some of those plants with you, maybe your favorites, maybe the ones that produce the most, and you could have something like this as a backup option to produce additional plants when you get where you are going, or should you have a massive crop failure one year and nothing produces just for whatever weird reason, then you'll at least have some backup seeds. Just be sure that you kind of rotate through these, keep an eye out, replace them every couple of years, things like that, just to ensure that you have fresh seeds that will likely, you know, sprout, germinate, and do what you want them to do. Thank you again for stopping by. I hope that this was useful for you. If you haven't done so already, if you wouldn't mind hitting that like button, the subscribe button, and the notification bell, that would be awesome. And if you have experience gardening and you have something helpful for me, who, I mean, I'll admit, I'm new at all this. I haven't killed any plants yet, but there's probably a lot of people out there that know a lot more about it than I do. So go ahead and pipe in those comments. And thank you guys again for stopping by. Hope to see y'all again. Y'all have a good one.